Okay, and we're back. Okay, so let's actually, what were we doing again? Right, we were working on this second part of the two-string method that is taking X classes, and there are the classes. Okay, so let's just bang this out quickly. So let's see here. So okay, now we want to go to our two-string. The keyboard's working again. I feel much more confident about that. Has a GPA of that, and is taking some number of classes. So I'm just going to copy this. So copy this. Has a GPA of that, and is taking 3 classes. Nope, it won't be 3 anymore. It will be this dot classes. Oops. Dot size. Okay, so now we need this dot classes. We'll just initialize it here in the constructor. Oops. Classes equals classes. Okay. Great. Swell. Array list. I don't really care what kind of list. I just want it to be a list. As a matter of fact, this probably should just be a list also. Well, we'll get to the other refactoring later. Okay, so let's do this. Hey, it's green. Let's run them all. Yay, 15 milliseconds, all 9 tests. Pass. Okay, where do we go next with this? What are some other test cases? Oxford, comma, and? Before we move away from the number, I don't know, are there other test cases that we should think about? What happens if you're only taking 1 class? What happens then? Oh, you're not taking any. There you go. So let's see here. What?
Are you a student if you're not taking any
classes? What if you're a student of life, man? I'm like, okay. That's a good question. What does the assignment say? Does it say anything about that? Yeah. Life's too much work. Let's see here. Aha! A student may take 0 more classes. You're not the first person to ask that, but it's a good question. So, okay, that's good to know. So 0 is valid. So let's see here. Student taking 0 classes is valid. So, okay, we're just going to have an empty array list. And then is taking, what should it say? No classes? I like that. Okay, let's give it a try. Let's see here. It's taking no classes, but is taking 0 classes. Okay. Well, let's fix that. We can do that. So let's see here. Student.toString. Okay. So now instead of this, let's just have give ourselves a method called getNumberOfClasses. Sure. And we don't want it to be an int. We want it to be a string. And so we'll say if this dot classes is empty, then return no classes, no class. Otherwise, return the string dot value of this, of the number of Okay, kind of like that. See how that goes. Nice. Well, we already introduced a method here. We probably don't need to refactor it. Okay, cool. What other test cases should we care about? What about 1? What about 1 class? Copy that, paste it down here. Let's see here. Student taking 1 class. Yeah, student taking 1 class, so class 1 is taking 1 class, proper English. Okay. Oh, wait, that passed? Oh, yeah. Because, yeah, right. That ain't right. Okay, so it's like I need to have the colon there. So I'm going to go back and, well, let's do that. Run that. Right, it's taking one class and taking one classes. Okay, so let's go back and add that semicolon some places. Break all sorts of stuff. Cool. Okay, so all sorts of things should break now. Let's just make sure that they break.
Why colon?
Because that's what the assignment says. Oh, I guess it's probably not in the case of 0, is it? So taking 3 classes.
Oh,
Colon.
I think our method was printing a period. That's why I was wondering why.
Well, because I hadn't added this stuff yet. That's a good point. And actually, I think I was a little naive because like no classes shouldn't have a colon; they should have a period. So let's see here. So that one probably still passes, right? And then, but this one probably still This one fails, right? Because it was 3 classes with a semicolon. This is 3 classes with a period, and then this one, the one class is still failing because it is 1 classes. Okay, let's go fix this. Get number of classes. So I am going to I'm just going to get rid of this here and just add it to the method. So this is no classes, period. Otherwise, if else if this dot classes dot size equals 1, it'll be 1 class colon. Otherwise, it is, and I can get rid of this thing, this dot number of classes plus classes colon. Okay, now let's try taking 1 class. Does that pass? Passes now. Run student, all of them. Oh, something failed. Number of classes. Oh, there's no period there. Yes. There's no space. Jeez.
So you don't need the else if, right?
Which else if? No, okay. Yeah, well, right. No, this is a good question. It's like, this is like part of the refactor. It's like, wait, did I really need that? I do it all the time where like, I get it to work. I'm so proud of myself, but it's like, oh, wait, I just did a whole bunch of extra code there. So no, I think this is sufficient. Okay, cool. Okay, so now I've got that. So anything else about like the number of classes that we need to take into account? No, I think we're good. Oh, negative. How would you do -1? Can you even do that? I don't know if I can get myself into that situation because like the size of the array list is never going to be negative. But that's a good point. Yeah. I suppose they're like boundary conditions. Like, why don't you put like 10 billion? Yeah. No. Okay. No, that's good. Okay. So now. Okay. So now I think we're ready to start looking at the whole Oxford comma nonsense. So this right here. Okay. Maybe I should check these in because I've got stuff working. So version control. Include number of classes in toString. Push. Do I still have yellow here? No, this is green now, so I don't have any warnings. So that's cool. I still have a warning in my test, but it's the one that one I expect. Okay, so now let's take a look at the Oxford comma stuff. Okay, so let's start easy this time. Let's just do one student taking 1 class, toString includes one class name. Taking one class and then class name. Okay, so let's see here. One class. Right, one class, and then there's nothing there. So let's fix that. Oh, and you know what? I want 2 spaces after that. Okay, so let's go to student.toString. Let's just augment this number of classes method, just include that stuff. So one class, and so then this ends up being this dot classes dot get 0. I think that'll be pretty easy. I don't think it's going to exactly work, but let's see how much closer we get. Here's the difference. It's taking one class dot. Oh, looks like I'm missing the dot and the space. If you click that, this makes it. Well, I guess it doesn't really make it that much easier to diff. So you can sort of notice that there's stuff missing there. Okay, so let's do that. I'm sorry, going back and forth to the wrong thing. So we will add the let's see here, dot space. Make this run. Does that pass now? Oh, still doesn't. What isn't it like? Oh, there's a space there. One class space. Yay, that one passes. Let's run everything. Oh, everything passes. Actually kind of surprised me a little bit. Because I noticed this period here. So I'm missing a test case. So I broke something and, oh, interesting. And I think it's missing something in the test. So when I have one taking 0 classes, that should have 2 spaces after it. And now if I run it, it should fail. Right, because the text ends up having 2 dots there. I noticed that because I was looking at the code and thinking about it. But it's the kind of thing where, if I hadn't thought about it, it's a bug, and we never would have caught it because we didn't write a test case for it, or we hadn't augmented our test case to do that. So we don't want the period here, and let's see, there's not a period there. So now let's run them all again. Does that run all of them? 17 milliseconds, all tests pass. Cool. Okay, so that's one class, and now let's do 2 classes. Include 2 class names. Now this will be rename this to class 1, and then duplicate that and rename. Oh, actually, we're going to say class 2, class 2, class 2, and then let's see. We want to say class 1 and class 2. Dot. Run those. Oops, it was. Oh, I need a space here. Expected is taking 1 class. No, is 2 classes. Whew, not even close. So here again, I wasn't thinking. It probably would have been better for me just to start over from scratch, so I would have talked myself through what this was supposed to be. Okay, expected is taking 2 classes, class 1 and class 2, but instead is taking 2 classes, got nothing. Okay, so now let's do that. So it's taking 2 classes. Okay, so oops, what do I want to do here? First, I want to so I want to append the classes after this one. Well, that's interesting. So I'm kind of faced with a dilemma here. I'm sort of thinking ahead, and maybe I shouldn't be thinking ahead, but I'm like, well, there's only 2 classes. It's just one and another. There are no commas involved. So let's see here. What's the best way to do this? Let's just be naive. Let's say the following. Let's move all of this into a string. Prefix equals that. Oh gosh, string number of classes. Phrase. There you go. Return phrase. And then let's see here. If this dot classes dot size equals 2, then phrase plus equal this dot classes dot get 0. Oh man, I don't know if I like this or not. And this dot classes dot get 1. I think that'll make it pass. It made it pass. So I'm green there. I'm green there. Something I can refactor? I don't know. What do you think? Maybe the use of the plus, like we were just talking about, it might be a little inefficient. But this isn't so bad to read. The stock classes, that's kind of hard to read. I don't know. What do you guys think? Readable enough for now? Let's move on to our test case. Okay.
You could do without the else's.
Oh, which else's?
Like any of the else's. I mean, you should only ever hit one of them.
True. Oh, I see. Just have the. I think it's a stylistic thing that I like to do. I've had other people tell me that. It's like, why do you have all those else blocks? Like, for me, this makes sense.
I suppose it's a little faster if you leave the else's in there because it doesn't evaluate every if statement. But,
Well, it wouldn't anyway,
oh, I guess you're
right? Yeah. Yeah. Right. This is like where I can tell, like, oh, my code's not as clean as I want it to be, but I don't know what to do. Let me move on, and maybe the answer will present itself. Okay. So let's see here. Okay, 3 class names. Let's do it. Okay, class 1, class 2, class 3. It's taking 3 classes. Class 1, comma, class 2, comma, and class 3. It's hard to read. That's hard to read. Not happy with that. Anyway, okay, let's run it. Fails. Class 1, class 2. I messed that up. Class 3. Run it again, what the heck. Okay, and this is 3 classes, and we got nothing. Okay, so let's give it something. So, if it's 2, do that. Otherwise, oops, parser exception. No, learn how to type. There you go. What do we want to do here? We want to iterate over the classes for string class name in classes. What doesn't it like? Incompatible types, required object found string, because my class is not a list of classes. It ought to be. Or, sorry, a list of strings. Make this an array list of string. Everybody's happy now. And okay, so I'm going to iterate all over those. And I'm going to phrase plus equals, my gosh, I'm doing a lot of string I'm doing string concatenation inside a loop. I'll fix it later. Class name plus comma. Except that's not going to work, is it? Because if I try it again, it's going to get all messy. What do I got? Taking 3 classes, that's what I expected. 3 classes, class 1, class 2, class 3, no ands. Extra commas all over the place. Okay. Let's try something else. Well, let's see here. So I guess I need to know if I'm about to print out the last one, then I put comma and. Okay. So I can't use this for loop. Maybe I can use another kind of for loop. Indexed for loop. Indexed for loop.
Yeah, until I less than plus
Like that? What was that?
probably that minus 1, right?
Yeah. Okay. So then I'll always print out the class name. If I'm at the last one, so if I equals classes dot size minus 1, so I'm at the last one, then print out comma and plus equals. Otherwise, print out comma. Up and the space there. You know that's going to work? It never works the first time. Okay, and then... Oh, and you know what? I need to put... Ooh. Wait a second. Yeah, that's not going to work.
It's minus 2, and then
Is it minus 2?
Minus 1 is a period.
I think I get... That's a good point. Where do I get the period from? The period comes from up here, so I don't need the period. That's good to know. So if it's... so I print it out... Okay, so it'd be minus 2, here you think. Print at the end, there's another one. Okay. This is why you have a test. I mean, I don't have to think that hard. I can just keep doing it until my test passes. Ah, it doesn't pass. Okay, what do I got? Class 1, class 2, and class 3. Oh, a comma after it. Okay.
Why don't you do
Yep.
statement outside the loop?
Do what outside of the loop?
The statement outside of the loop, and just go to minus 2. Loop to minus 2.
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, okay, so don't loop. So instead of looping all the way to the end, loop to the penultimate one, you mean? Okay, and then, but then when do I do the comma?
You can calculate the last 2.
Okay,
outside the loop.
yeah, I kind of like that. Okay, so then this one is to minus 2. Okay, and then I don't. Okay, and then here I always concatenate the phrase. I always concatenate that. Oh, this needs to be cleaned up. Okay, and then yeah, and then what do I do down here? Phrase plus equals comma and classes get classes.size minus 1. Something like that. Is that right? Is that what we're thinking? Nope.
Also need
Leave the
classes
minus
outside
2.
minus 2.
Oh, okay, right. Yes. Oh, I guess an empty one. Oh, okay, because, okay, gotcha. No, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So like before the comment.
Plus equals classes.get classes.size minus 2. Okay.
Change the 2 to 1 up in the folder.
This one right here? Oh. Yeah, okay, I could do that too. Try that. Well, wait a second though. Oh, yeah, it's less than, not less than or equal to.
You want the Oxford comma, right?
Yeah, so it'll be,
No space.
So, yeah.
no space. Okay.
Always.
Oh. Always. Woohoo! I don't know what I just did there, but I got the test to pass. So I don't care what I just did there because I got the test to pass. No, and actually, I'm serious about that. So we're all very smart people. We're all proud how smart and tricky we can get and everything like that. And one of the it's almost like an unspoken criticism of test-driven development. It's like you're making it too easy. Oh, you're not thinking about you didn't sketch out your entire algorithm in pseudocode first. Like, yep, it's okay because I don't have to think that hard, so I can do this after working a long, hard day because I've got the test to validate it for me. And it's not cheating, and it won't make you dumber. As a matter of fact, all this stuff now I can go through and I can run all my tests, and oh, good, everything still passes, right? That's worth the time, in my opinion, that I invested trying to get this to work. So, okay, few. Okay, any other tests? Do we need to do more than 3 classes? Is there anything unique about more than 3 classes?
As long as it's not more than the size of the int, I think you're probably okay.
Right, yeah, some like boundary of 10 billion or whatever. Okay. Yeah, probably run out of memory first. Okay. Well, that's cool. Okay. So are we done with the student method? Have we done everything here? Oh, yeah, double quotes. I think we already tested that. Oh.
Classes, if you enter classes with double quotes, you have to remove them and
Oh, that's true. These double quotes here are coming in from the command line. Actually, we'll get to that after the break. But yeah, that's cool. So let's see here. Oh, you know what? Here's what we should do. Let's just, for the sake of it, just make sure that when we give, actually, this exact student here, that we get that exact output. So why not? Oops. What was that? Test. Public void. So make sure Dave from assignment is what we expect. So student Dave equals new student. No. Okay, and so what do I got? I got, so the name is Dave, and then the classes are classes. GPA is 3.64. Gender is male. So student male. The variable classes. Oops. Equals arrays dot as list. Yeah. Algorithms. Oops. Operating systems. Java. What isn't it like? Nope, doesn't like. Oh, array less y. Okay, sorry. There we go. Oh, and I can't add it. Ugh. Stop being tricky. Okay. This doesn't need to be an array list. It probably shouldn't be an array list. Let's make it a list. List is a abstract, it's an interface implemented by the list method. We don't use anything special about array list, and so why expose the implementation? We can just say, I just need a list. I don't care if it's an array list or a linked list or if it comes from a database. I don't care. I just need something that's a list. Okay, great. I've got Dave now, and so then assert that Dave.toString equal to this thing right here. Okay, let's see if that works. Oh, ooh, very interesting. Okay, this is why it's always good to do an end-to-end test. Let's see if I messed it up. Oh, there's a new line in operating systems. That's weird. That ain't right. Okay. Okay. Here I thought it was my code. It was the test after all. Nope, still doesn't like it. Sorry, what?
The top one, the Dave has a GPA, and the systems and Java are 2 separate strings, I think.
They are not. Nope, they shouldn't be.
I mean, like, if you scroll to the right,
They're concatenated.
I guess it is concatenated.
So let's see here. Okay, IntelliJ, help me out here. What's the difference? Oh, it's that space. But it told me, right? And I found out pretty easily. I like there to be 2 spaces after my period. So we will. There we go. Okay, good. Cool. Okay, well, can we think of any more tests that we need to be written? So we're done. This is another beauty of the test-driven development. You know when you're done. You know when you're done, when all of your tests pass and there are no more tests that you think can be written. And after you refactor your code, it's like, this is as good as it's going to get. Hey, it's done. It's not like, the assignment's due, I'm done. Or it's like, I think I got everything. And, I've done a bunch of manual testing over the last, 2 hours, and I think everything's ready. Everything's done, and you can verify that it's done. So I've always thought of test-driven development as an investment. You use the time that you spend, and we spent a lot of time. Right? I'm not saying this was fast, but look, we built everything up step by step. And that investment pays off in 2 ways. You know you have a complete set of tests. You know, you know that things aren't broken. So what you've saved is debugging time, right? How many times have we made some little change only to have it break something and not realize it for another half an hour, right? And so now you found something that's broken. You have to think of all the things that you did in the last half an hour. No, what we did here is like every couple of seconds we were able to validate. It's like, oh, yep, all the assumptions that I've made since the beginning of class are still valid. And I think there's a lot of power in that. So here again, the time that you invest up front to get things working will be is more than paid back in the time saved from debugging and the confidence that you gain by knowing that your stuff is working. Okay, cool. Well, let's check that in and move on to something else briefly before we come back to some different kind of test-driven development at the end of class. So, implement include the classes in the toString output. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's talk about, I'll keep that up for a second. Talk about some other stuff. Okay, so, question.
So, in a real world scenario, are you the developer writing all these tests? Because isn't there kind of something against the developer writing his own tests?
I wouldn't say there's something against it. I mean, there's some, there's some downsides. So, better to have a developer write tests than no tests at all. And actually, if you're doing test-driven development, it's okay for that to be, you still get a lot of benefit from that being a solitary endeavor. One of the things that a TDD does is it focuses you on the problem that you're trying to solve, not just the implementation. So I don't know about you, but when I write code, I always want to think about here's what it needs to do, and here's oh yeah, right, I'm going to need a method in 2 hours, so I'll write that method now. You do that, and you generate a lot of wasted code, and you have to go back and forth, lots of context switching. It's actually unfocused. Solitary test-driven development is better than no test-driven development at all. I think that's sort of the that's what people would say. However, I think I'll save pair programming for next time. When we look at pair programming, though, right, there are 2 roles. There's the person at the keyboard, and then there's a person there's a navigator, and then there's the driver. The navigator is the person who's thinking about the test. It's like, okay, here's the next thing that the code needs to do. And so often, a way to pair is you have one person write the test, get it to red, give the keyboard to the other person, have them get it to green, and they both refactor. And this is cool because while the driver is getting it to green, is writing the code, the navigator is looking over their shoulder, but also be thinking about the next test, and not the next implementation, the next test. And so that's really effective because you end up getting 2 points of view on it. And then also it lets one person focus on the how and the other person focus on the what. The what needs to happen. So like given these inputs, what is the output? So does that make sense? So it's okay to do it on your own. It's probably even better to do it with a pair. Yeah.
So if you write all these tests, they're awesome tests. You have a lot of coverage. Maybe you write some integration tests. So what does QA do?
QA writes even more tests. They write, so like what does QA do? QA helps a lot on the front end. So I'd say if you really want to go extreme with test-driven development, it's not just test-driven development of the implementation. It's test-driven development of the entire feature. So I think a really great discipline for a cross-functional team to have is to say, hey, yes, we need to figure out the architecture of the solution. Yes, we need to figure out what code we need to write and divvy up all that work. But start with the test cases. Because ultimately, what are you doing? You are providing functionality to a user, right? And so if you can figure out, if you can document in a lightweight way, which might be like automated tests of some sort, or it might just be some simple lightweight, here again, those given when then scenarios, is a good way to then use that as a rallying point for the entire team. So it's like, what are we here to do? Make these tests pass. Oh yes, we want to have good architecture. We want things to do, but make the test pass. And then instead of what is sort of the traditional way is that the developer goes off and does what they think the right thing is, and then throws it over the wall to the QA engineer and says, "Okay, I did it." And the QA engineer is like, "Did what exactly?" It's like, "Oh, the thing." It's like, "I don't know what you're talking about," because there's been all of this, because all of the work so far was sort of like in one person's head or just amongst the developers. So then, so like for those of you who are like in PSEP and doing QA work, there's still a role to be played for. It's not so much quality assurance. It's closer to the user. It's saying, hey, making sure that everybody understands what success looks like, what the user needs to be able to do. And one thing that someone who's a good QA engineer can do is help you understand those boundary conditions. So like there'll be while the developer is like, okay, I can use this JSON parsing library, and how about Docker? We gotta have some Docker, right? The QA engineer is going, okay, what happens if you leave it running for 3 weeks at a time? Or okay, what happens if everybody in America wants to buy healthcare in the first 8 hours, right? That's what they're that's what they're doing. That's what a good QA engineer will do, and a good developer will listen to that person and say, "Oh, that's right. We need to figure out how to do that." So before we worry about certain details, like make sure we understand the the whole of what the code needs to do. Okay, let's walk through a couple of things. So. Documentation. So you express yourself through your code in a number of ways, and one of the things that I want you guys as students to express, to be able to describe your code in writing. This is important professionally when you're sending emails to people, when you are putting pull requests up, when you're saying, hey, here's what I did. You need to be able to convey what it is you're doing. And so then for this course, there are two primary ways that you do that. The first is called the plan of attack. So the plan of attack, or POA, is a couple of paragraphs in text that describes what your project does and a little bit about how it does it. So it's just a design document. So I require that 3 days before the project's due, so that's Sunday night at 6 p.m., that you email me, send me an email with letters POA in the subject that contains, a couple of paragraphs about how you're going to approach your assignment. This is the idea here is a couple of things. One is to give you experience conveying your thoughts and ideas in writing about your projects, but that's also a forcing function to make sure that you don't completely leave the entire thing to the last minute. this has worked well over the years. Most of the students are like, "Oh, it's kind of silly," but hey, when I had to put it into words, I realized there were a couple of edge conditions that I was missing, or that I was making things much more complicated for myself than I needed to be. So please send me your POAs 3 days before it's due, and so that means that the POA for Project 1 is due Sunday at 6 o'clock, and each POA is worth 1 point out of your assignment. Any questions on the POA? Oh, I guess if you have something urgent for me, don't put the words POA in it because they all go off to a folder, and I grade it on Monday evening at some point. Yeah.
Is there any way you could throw up an example POA?
Yeah. Post something to the community, and I'll go find one from years past, which I thought was a good one. Yeah. And here again, it's not it's a couple of paragraphs. Not to be super detailed. Actually, it probably shouldn't be super detailed. But yeah, it's good to get practice sort of saying, hey, briefly, here's what I'm going to do. The other mechanisms for communicating what you know about your projects is closer to the code. So the first is API documentation in the form of Java docs. So Java doc, we've seen a little bit of it. As a matter of fact, we saw it here in our student class. So for instance, all these comments that begin with /*, these are called Java doc or API comments. And there are tools that will extract these comments and generate pretty HTML documentation. As a matter of fact, I can probably just do that right here. I haven't really talked about this yet. Not there, not there. Here. So if we go to grader, no. If we go to student, and we say Maven Java doc. So this will go off and run a tool on on the source code, and from that open we'll generate some. Let's see here, site API docs index.html. Oops. Yep. There we go. Generate API documentation from the class. It has, I need to get all that linking stuff right. I can fix that later. Here's information about the constructor. And here again, the constructor, compare this with the source code. So here I have my Java comment above my constructor, and I have these @param tags that describe all the parameters, and the JavaDoc tool will extract all of that and put them here. So as you're, and you guys have, okay, have you guys seen JavaDoc before? Do we need to go into detail about this? Do they cover that? No? But you've used the API, the API docs, right? You've used Oracle's docs before. Oh, here's another example. Here's all of my source code, and I've got stuff configured better so that you can do stuff like link off to things like, here's the documentation for this guy's superclass, which is a Java Lang object, and so you have this is actually API docs that live. So if we open the frame, view frame, no. Oh, I can't open it in a new window. Oh bother. This is actually coming from Oracle's website. But you can link JavaDoc off to other places, and there's some really kind of cool stuff that you can do with it. And so then, sorry, back to here. Oh, neat. Sorry. Anyway, you can generate API docs from this. So what I want you to do in for your code is to add API docs, and please read up about them on this link. You can learn about all the various tags that you can use with them. I also recommend, actually, I kind of require that you read up on essentially the standard Java coding conventions. I try to follow them, and this is things like where should your braces go, what kind of indenting should you use, what are good variable names, all of that kind of stuff, sort of the order of things. That's one of the nice things about Java is that in general, most Java developers have stuck to a set of standards, and of course this is nice. So then when you see somebody else's Java code, it's approachable to you, and it's not so confusing. In other languages where there isn't as much standardization, it can be very hard to approach things, like Perl. Anyway. Add API documentation. Oh, and by the way, when I grade your projects, the last test case is I wrote a tool that will extract all the API documentation, print it out as plain text, and I'll instruct the graders to assign some value to that. So it's required. And I think it's what Java comment for every class and method that you write. And so then, I might deduct up to 1 point for an assignment that's not well documented. So, experiment with using the API documentation. Sorry, the Java doc comments. Yeah.
Does that requirement include like standard getters and setters?
Getters and setters. If the name of your method is like get flights, yeah, right, and you say gets the flights and at returns the flights, that's kind of dumb, isn't it? So it's more about certainly your main method, and then if you're adding helper methods, you're doing some nice refactorings and stuff. Yeah, I'll tell the graders if you've got good method names and stuff, you won't lose credit. But if you've got method so if there's like if there's a method name which isn't obvious and there's no comment, then you'll probably lose a little bit of credit.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, in addition to the Java doc, every command line program has a -readme option. So this was in Project 1. I think some of you saw it and asked about it last week. And I said, "Oh, cover it now." Now we're covering it. So if whenever -readme appears on your command line, your program should do the following: print out a brief, concise, and nicely formatted textual description of what your project does. So not the entire POA, but sort of like 1 or 2 sentences of like, "Hey, here's what we're doing here," print out this README. Also include your name and like which assignment. And it should be more than just the command line usage. It's okay to include the command line usage in the README. That's just probably a good thing. But it shouldn't. It should be more than that. It should be here again a couple of sentences that explain what your project does. And note that when -readme is present, your program shouldn't do any other work. So no more. So no additional command line parsing and stuff like that. Just print the README and exit. So. Those are a couple of ways that I'd like you to express your code in words. The plan of attack, which is due 3 days before the project is due, and then adding API documentation to your code and having a -readme option. Any questions about those? Nope. Yeah, we got one more thing to cover here, which was... Oh yeah, submitting your projects. Okay, so you've done your project. Now it's time to submit it. Back when I started teaching this course, there were still some courses where you submitted your projects on a floppy disk. That seems really archaic now. But that seemed insecure and error prone. To me even back then. And so what I did is I wrote a Java program that lets you submit your source code. So I have a program called Submit, which you give it a bunch of files, and it will take those files, put them, jar them up into a jar file, and then email them to the TA. And then I've got all of this like automated processes that will go and extract them from that email and then let me grade them really easily. And this is good because this is how the class is able to scale to so many students. I've automated things like this. So here's how you use it. I'm pretty sure you have to use it from the CS department Linux machines. So I don't think you can run it on your laptop. It has to use an SMTP server, and I think you can only do that through the department's machines, which is okay because I highly recommend that you actually it just kind of forces you to make sure that your code works on the CS department machines before submitting, because that's what I'll grade them. Right? So. This is the submit program, and so then it's got some required information like which project it is, who you are, your Unix login ID, your email, and then of course multiple files. I think Yeah, and it does some enforcement about the number of files. You have to submit at least 3. So please don't run the submit program once for every file, once per project, or rather, submit multiple files in one invocation of the program. If something goes wrong, there are some options there, but things have been working pretty well lately. So for instance, if this is I guess from the example from previous times when we had an appointment instead of flights, but you can probably figure it out. If I wanted to submit my source code for project 1, I would run the command like this from my source directory. Oh, note that this came up in office hours. Writing automated tests, unit tests, integration tests are not required for the project. I don't have a way to really assess the quality of your tests, and so I encourage you. I hope you've seen tonight that it's worth time investing in writing unit tests, and shortly we'll see how to write how to write integration tests. But I don't want you to submit them. I just care about your source code. And what I'll do then is I'll build your source code and I'll just run in the command line with some input that with some input arguments, and then just assess that. So automated tests are for your own benefit. I still recommend them, but they're not required, and I don't want you to submit them. So anyway, so this is how you use the submit program. A whole bunch of other notes that you can read through. Any questions on the submitting? No? Okay. There's a couple more topics that I want to cover, but we need a break. So let's take 10 and be back at 8:27, and then we'll finish up.